On Sunday, the Granite State played host to NASCAR's Monster Energy Cup Series at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. After going over half the season without a win, Kevin Harvick was determined to make magic happen at the Magic Mile. He and Denny Hamlin battled in the closing laps, even making contact for the victory. Happy Harvick drove his car to the winner's circle to hoist the lobster. Good evening and welcome to another edition of Ross Racing, brought to you by the one and only Rockingham Dragway. I'm Matt Harrelson, and along with me behind the wheel is Russell Parker. So, of course, we've got a plethora of things to talk about tonight, including playoffs for both the Cup and Xfinity Series. Plus, Russell has an opinion piece about Rockingham Speedway and iRacing. But first, we got to talk about Harvick's victory at New Hampshire and finally getting that first win of 2019.
Yeah, it's been a 22-race drought for him for wins. This is the longest he's ever been without a win in the Cup Series for quite some time. His last win was back in Texas of 18, and he's kind of by this point last year he had 6 wins.
Yeah. So
it's really unheard of for him to go from as far back as he's only got a few top 10s and top 5s this season as well. He started off really good in a lot of races, but he can't close them out. And he's actually kind of known as the closer, so it's really hard to see this type of Kevin Harvick. But he said overall, him and his team, they feel very positive still. And even coming into this race, they were still really happy with the way everything was going for them. Of course, not in terms of happiness of their team's working very well together and all that, but they finally got the win to really cap it off, and I think it's all worked out and paid off for them in the end. Now they're officially into the playoffs, and I think for moving on from here, I think that they're going to have a stronger season.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't we talking about Harvick this time last year as being part of that big three, if you will? And as you just alluded to, this time last year had 6 wins already. Is there any one thing that you can pinpoint why he's had such a slow start this year?
I feel like his team probably just hasn't been able to figure out the rules package. I mean, some drivers do it really faster. You've seen Joe Gibbs and Penske pick up on it instantly, whereas teams like Hendrick just haven't. I mean, they got 2 victories themselves, so they're probably the next best one to figure it out. But even they have some struggles with it. Also, Stewart-Haas Racing is probably that step below Penske, if you will, in terms of where teams are, and it just took them a little bit longer. But it's interesting that they won this race at the track that Gibbs and Penske dominates typically. Yeah. But I did find out that he won this race last year, so it kind of isn't surprising that he does win it. But with the way that he's been having this season, I mean, he can't even win at Phoenix. Something's wrong with Harvick. So. But he's finally getting back in the gear now.
All right. Well, while one veteran of the sport now celebrates, another left New Hampshire perhaps with his head down. We're talking about 7-time Cup Series champion Jimmie Johnson. And if you're new to NASCAR, you're probably surprised to hear that with the way the 48 driver's been performing in 2019. At the Magic Mile, Johnson finished 30th after getting involved with an on-track accident. But this isn't all of the unfortunate news for Mr. 7-time, is it?
No, it's not really. I mean, right now he's outside of the playoff bubble, which is really hard to see from him. I mean, he's made it pretty much every year, and now he's probably not going to make it, except for he's been knocked out of it in the first round. But to see this guy who has dominated what was in the chase, to dominate that every single year, he won 6 of his Cup championships off of that format. Then he came back in, I believe it was 2016, he won a championship then as well under a different type of format. And it's really so surprising to see that he's dropped from, in 2016 with 5 wins in a championship, went from to 3 wins in 2017 and no wins in 2018. He's still winless in 2019. And he's actually kind of performing worse than he has in the last few seasons. So I don't understand what's going on with him. Of course, Hendrick's kind of struggled quite a little bit. Alex Bowman has some really rough racing at New Hampshire. He had to go through so many backup cars that they had to take Jimmie Johnson's backup car for his car. So Hendrick had a really rough weekend overall, and I don't want to say that this is just a bad race for Johnson, but he's had a lot of bad ones. So it's just kind of a trend for him. He's had a few good races in the past few weeks now. Chicagoland, he finished 4th, and Daytona was 3rd. So he's doing well, and he's averaging 15.1. So that's not terrible, but for a driver of his caliber, you would expect him to be at least averaging at least somewhere in the top 10 every single week.
Well, it's no surprise that Jimmie Johnson is getting up there in age, so to speak. Do you think that we're going to start hearing rumors of retirement again?
I think we will, and I don't know how much longer he intends to go. Obviously, I'm sure he knows what's going on as well, but it's all going to come down to how passionate he is about racing for himself, and or is he going to take the back seat, let someone else come up? Is he going to be a team player? Is he also going to be a family guy and go back to his family for a while and just retire, walk off to the sunset? Yeah. And if he did retire, he has every right to do it because he has accomplished so much in the sport. He's tied it with two of the best drivers in our sport. He's probably considered now one of the best, and over numerous victories. And he's got a lot of respect for the fans and drivers in the garage. And so there's so much about him, just not as a driver, but also as a human being in the sport. He's made so many accomplishments that, yes, he will be a first ballot Hall of Famer as soon as he's eligible.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. But as you mentioned, Johnson is now hanging on the outside of the playoffs currently. But does he or anybody else have a chance at bursting some bubbles before we get into the final 10 races of the season?
Yeah, like I said, Johnson's sitting on the outside of that bubble right now with only 17 points back, so it's not a big deficit. He can make that up with only 6 races to go. But really, I think you want to look at 13th all the way down to 18th in that, because that's about a 31-point difference, and Kyle Larson's at 13th spot. He may feel like he's safe, but if he has one bad race, and say Jimmie Johnson comes back and wins, he gets 2 really good solid stage wins in one race, and then a really solid top 5 finish in that race as well. He's made up pretty much all those points that he could.
He's right back in it.
And Larson's way down here now. So all it takes is for one race to make a big mistake like that early on in the race. And I feel like Larson, he's good at what he's doing, and he kind of has these late race incidents. So if anything, he'll be safe for at least the first 2 stages. But if you look at some guys like Eric Jones, who's battling for his career right now, you got to look at him, who's only 28 points. Again, not a big buffer, but if you look all the way down to, like I said, 17, 18th with Johnson and Suarez are tied at 17 under. I feel like that those guys, especially, they got into a little accident at New Hampshire together, so now they're both kind of just probably going to be battling each other a little bit harder as we go along. And, of course, if somebody does win on the outside of that bubble, that pushes Ryan Newman down to that cutoff and Boyer outside of it. So there's a lot of play right now, and there's only 6 races to go here left in the regular season before we hit the playoffs. So much can happen, and I feel like we're going to see someone get knocked out.
It is definitely going to be exciting. So let's switch gears. And with the way Christopher Bell has been racing in the Xfinity Series this season, you might think he was a Cup regular. But the 24-year-old is racing for a championship in the series and scored his 5th win of the season at New Hampshire. So we don't need to tell you that he's locked into the playoffs, but among him going into the championship season is Cole Custer, who also has 5 wins, 3-time winner Tyler Reddick, and with the lone win, Michael Annett. So for some drivers, however, they may not be able to get into the playoffs unless they win. So Russell, how's the bubble for these guys looking?
Not good at all. Unlike the Cup Series, these guys have over 100 points to make up.
Wow.
Yeah, they have only 12 spots to get into it, so it's even more tougher in that term. So right now we got Gray Gaulding and Brandon Jones only difference at 113 points, and it's going to definitely take a win for any of those guys to blow the cutoff line to get there. Now, if someone does blow that cut line, does get a win, that's going to put a really tight race between Ryan Sieg and Brandon Jones, because those guys are only 1 point apart. So if, like I said, we get a new winner, blow that cut line, we're going to see a really tight race for those 2 drivers, and that will make things a lot really interesting. But I'm sure that those guys would rather try and make up some points and not let that happen. So you never know what's going to happen. They only got 8 races to go. They go to Iowa this weekend. There's going to be they got some road courses coming up as well. So I feel like there's going to be some interesting victories that could come out of these.
But before we move on, I know we've talked ad nauseum about Christopher Bell. 24 years old, obviously just picked up his 5th win at New Hampshire. Does he have anything left to prove at this level? Is it time for him to finally move up?
I think he wants to win a championship. Of course, Tyler Reddick won a championship last year. He's only got the 1 victory this season. And, of course, you got Cole Custer, who's been silently getting victories.
Yeah.
He's up to 5 as just a many, but it's been more quieter than Christopher Bell. And I would say you have to watch out for him. So, right now you got those top 3 guys. Taylor Reddick has 3 wins. Michael Nett has that lone victory. But regardless, those are the top 4 guys right now, and they could probably be, again, getting into the playoffs itself, into the championship for. Bell's still got to win. I think that's what he wants to. He wants to win championship first and then move on. That's probably what his goal is.
All right. Well, we mentioned a lot of names. Some drivers doing very well, some not so much. Let's talk about the ones that are in the groove. Who you got this week?
Well, last week I had Ryan Newman, and this week I got him again. He impressed me once more. Started at 26th, and he finished in 7th. Another top 10 victory for him. And, of course, that pushes him up higher in the playoff bubble. So, again, he's sitting at 14th right now, and that helped him out tremendously at that race. And for the Xfinity Series, I got Ryan Sieg, who started 15th and finished 8th. Really good day for him.
All right. So, with talks of NASCAR changing up its Cup Series schedule in 2021, fans have been buzzing about the sport bringing back some tracks from the past. Perhaps at the very top of that list for many, of course, including here in Richmond County, is Rockingham Speedway. But with recent comments from NASCAR President Steve Phelps about, quote, wholesale changes not happening, and Rockingham Speedway owners saying they're, quote, not quite ready for prime time, end quote, The Rock may have to take a backseat for a little longer than we all have anticipated and hoped for. But, Russell, you asked a question in your opinion column on the richmondobserver.com, which you can go read for free. Why wait years to bring NASCAR back to the 45-year-old facility when it can be done now virtually?
Yeah, so NASCAR has an iRacing series. Actually, it's going on tonight on national television for the first time ever. So, they have this iRacing series. It's eNASCAR Peak Antifreeze series, and it's all online. And iRacing is a simulation. It's not a video game. It's nothing like you take home with your Xbox controller.
Okay.
It plays differently. And what they do is they'll have a circuit they run, and it kind of aligns with the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. And so they go to the same tracks that the Cup guys do typically.
That's cool.
And they race in those cars as well. So it's just that they have a computer with them and a steering wheel and a gas pedal, kind of like what I got right here. But it's really competitive. It's got a good following for it. And I don't see why they couldn't take this. I feel like NASCAR is missing an opportunity to take that series and try some unique tracks with it that's not on the regular Cup Series or even Xfinity or Truck Series. Try out some different tracks. Rockingham is on iRacing. It's already on there. It's the same track from when the trucks ran here the last time. Nothing's changed. They're same surface. They laser scan these tracks so they get it pretty much dead spot on as real life. And these cars, they do race pretty similar to real life. So I know it doesn't bring that attraction to Richmond County specifically, but it does at least get the Rock back in the eyes and in front of the spotlight. And I think it could snowball into bringing racing back here a little more faster. Again, and if this is 2021 we're talking about, may not be happening, but I feel like with iRacing and their series, I think they could get it going a lot quicker. I just feel like it would also get a lot more eyes on that as well. And I think that's what NASCAR would like to do, is get more eyes and bring in a new crowd of people who's never seen this type of racing in action before and get some new fans. I think it would benefit a lot, and get some of the old timers to watch, because it's Rockingham, or even if it's Nashville or North Wilkesboro, they can bring those type of tracks in there as well. And, they could bring those guys in and keep kind of both fan bases together. So I think it would be a very positive impact if they did that. Yeah,
and I think what every sports league, NASCAR included, is trying to do is find some younger fans, some younger viewers. Perhaps this is a way to do it. And I'm right there with you. You hit the nail on the head. Perhaps at the very least, this could at least just bring some awareness that, hey, Rockingham Speedway, still around, still a thing. Right. Now, you've touched on it already a little bit, but how is the iRacing scene compared to the real world of racing? Because like you mentioned, you got the wheel here tonight to kind of display a little bit of what it's like, but there must be much more to it than just a steering wheel and some pedals hooked up to a computer, right?
Yeah, it's a lot more to it. I mean, there's some guys who go all out and actually build like a body around their seat. I mean, you get your own, you get your own seat, you get your wheel and your pedals, and then
put a helmet on.
You could do that if you wanted to. But yeah, there's some YouTube series out there. I think just last night, our friend Joseph Lombard, he just finished up his own series, and it's on a YouTube. It's on a kind of like its own little series on an online broadcast. So there's a lot of it out there, and they do race very similar to what you see on the actual track. And not just NASCAR, you can also do IndyCar, ISMA, you can do some dirt racing as well.
Anything with wheels on it, basically.
Pretty
right?
much, and they have all the specs that you can set up your car the way you want to. There's a lot of play in how you do that. It's very, very difficult. If you go to a NASCAR Hall of Fame, you can race a simulation there it's a small price, but you can race it there and try it out. It's very difficult, and it's not. And you can take this wheel and play it on one of the video games, traditional video games. It's not going to be anything like that. It's just like the real deal getting into a race car, and it's called similar for a reason because it's simulating real life, and it really is very realistic.
Well, it sounds very cool and something that I personally would like to try out. So
I think the best thing about this versus the real life is that it's more easy to pay for it. You may only spend $100 for 2 years for iRacing subscription and on here, whereas you might spend a couple of $1,000s on a real car.
Absolutely.
So I think it's also a lot easier for NASCAR to make money off of it without having to put too much into it.
All right. Well, just 7 races ago, NASCAR made the trip to the Poconos. This week, they're back at the Tricky Triangle for the Gander RV 400. Now, at the first race under the new rules package, we saw Kyle Busch take the checkered flag, and according to the Vegas odds, he's the favorite coming into it with Brad Keselowski right behind him. So, Russell, do you agree with what Vegas is saying?
I agree that he's the favorite, but I don't think he's going to be the one to get the victory. I think Kevin Harvick has a good, strong strategy of this race. He had it earlier this season where he had a good strategy to beat everybody else, and it just didn't work out for his favor because he had some mechanical issues with his car. And I just feel like, coming into it the next time around, that Harvick and his team's got it figured out, and they'll come out there swinging hard. Brad Keselowski, he's definitely going to be a big threat this race as well. He's got a win here. Kyle Busch had, I think, at least 3 in the Cup Series and probably multiple in the other series.
Right.
But there's other guys out there, too. Probably I feel like Daniel Suarez and Eric Jones might be 2 guys you can watch out for to kind of at least make a little threat to those top guys, but probably not. Maybe get top 5 out of it. But
both of them with their quote-unquote feet to the fire, too, so a little extra motivation.
Maybe not Daniel Suarez, but Eric Jones definitely. I think you're going to see him racing a lot harder, and I feel like you're going to see Chase Elliott run pretty well there as well. So overall, I do agree that Vegas has it right in terms of who's probably the favorite, but I don't think the favorite's going to be going to victory lane.
All right, well, before we get to your predictions at the end of the show, let's, of course, head to the Rock Block, brought to you by the Rockingham Dragway. Lots going on this weekend, just like every weekend on the Strip. MXA Street Drags Test and Tune is going to be continuing this Saturday at the Dragway, and as we've mentioned before on this show, here are some of the rules for the Test and Tune. Now, tech cards must be filled out completely with the correct card number. This is in case you want to head out there and hit the track yourself. All drivers must have proper wristbands applied when your tech card is purchased. Helmets are regulated by the sanctioning organizations, and they call for helmets if your vehicle runs quicker than 13.99 on the quarter mile. Of course, you can check with the Dragway on that. Motorcycle riders must wear full leathers if you're running faster than 120 miles per hour in the quarter mile, which on these bikes nowadays, not hard to do. Helmets, gloves, and leather shoes above the ankle required for all bikes. And again, if you need more information about that, head to rockinghamdragway.com. Plus, the Mustang Wrecking Crew Club is going to be on hand as well. Gates open at 4 p.m. on Saturday, running until 11. Now,
I love Mustangs.
I do too. In addition to this, I also want to give the owner, Steve Earwood, a shout out. And I'm going to read this from a press release from the Dragway. Steve Earwood, who in 1992 realized a lifelong dream with his purchase of Rockingham Dragway, was recognized Tuesday, July 23rd, on the floor of the North Carolina General Assembly for his contributions to the state, Richmond County, and the city of Rockingham. Senate President Pro Tem Phil Berger and State Senator Tom McInnes, who of course represents Richmond County, presented Earwood a significant of acknowledgement expressing appreciation and gratitude for his 27-year stewardship of the track, of course located on U.S. Highway 1 north of Rockingham. And then from Senator McInnes, he said, quote, "It was an honor to have Steve Earwood at the North Carolina General Assembly to recognize him for his contributions to drag racing and Richmond County." He went on to say, during his ownership of the track, hundreds of millions of dollars have been brought to and invested in North Carolina. So, of course, big congratulations to Steve, all of his crew out there. We've said it many times. I'm going to say it again. They do a wonderful job, not just racing, but everything from concerts to, all kinds, anything with wheels, they put it out there. So.
I know that everybody talks about the Speedway a whole lot, but the Dragway definitely gets overshadowed quite a bit, and it's unfair for that because they have a tremendous team out there getting things going on every single weekend, pretty much from like the beginning of spring to the end of like fall. So it's like every single week you got something going on and something of different styles for different people. And it's just very unique what they got going on there. Not just racing, like you said, they got concerts, got Epicenter out here, which was very successful.
Absolutely.
And I know a large part about how they come in with Steve Earwood and his team out there, and they do a tremendous job of getting things going.
Yeah, and as long as the Speedway has been closed, if you will, Steve and his crew have continued to put things out there every weekend. It's kind of a shame that it does get overshadowed. Hopefully that won't be the case, though, as we continue to bring newer and different things out to the Dragway. So again, that is your Rock Block, of course, brought to you by Rockingham Dragway. All of that information and more can be found on rockinghamdragway.com. All right, time for predictions. Who you got this week?
All right, for the Truck Series, they're racing at Pocono along with the Cup Series. I got Harrison Burton. He's driving the 18-car or truck of Kyle Busch Motorsports, and I think that's probably the best truck that Kyle Busch has running out there. Personally, I think that's his best one. So I'm going to go with Harrison Burton. I think he's got the talent. Of course, most of the drivers have had some issues this season in the KBM truck, so maybe they can sort it out after this race. And for the Xfinity Series, we're going to be racing in Iowa this weekend. I got Cole Custer taking his 6th victory. He had the pole for this race earlier this season, and Christopher Bell won it. So they kind of switched to 1 and 2 on that one. I think it's going to be the opposite way this time around. So Cole Custer beats out Eric Jones. And then for the Cup Series, I've got Happy Harvick, again, on the strategy, taking it and getting it in the victory lane back-to-back. I think he's on a momentum. He's on a roll. He is going to get another victory.
All right. Well, as I say every week, you heard it here first officially. Head to Vegas, head to AC. Russell's got you covered on your NASCAR bets. So that is going to do it for another edition of Ross Racing, just like the rest, brought to you by Rockingham Dragway. That is Russell Parker. I'm Matt Harrelson. We'll see you right back here on the track for another edition of Ross Racing. Have a